Hi everyone, my name is Liz Lawton and my talk is called The Economics of Success, an Uneven Race. So this is my mom and me, and my mom's name is Angela. She is from Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a tiny island, it's the third world country, it's off the coast of India, and it's really poor. When my mom was 24, she left Sri Lanka and she came to the United States. When she came here, she started college at St. Anselm in New Hampshire. And after that, she went to medical school at Jefferson Medical School, and she became an infectious disease doctor. A lot of you are thinking that this is the perfect rags to riches story. She came here with $300 and she made it and she became a doctor. It seems that way. But if you look closer at her story, you'll see the family that took her in and literally gave her a place to live. And you'll see the teacher that called the Board of Admissions at St. Anselm, and they got her a full scholarship. You'll see the advisor who called the Dean of Admissions at Jefferson Medical School, and they got her in. It seems like a rags to riches story, but my mom had opportunity, and she had people willing to help her and advocate for her, and it worked for her. This is the exception, not the rule. It doesn't work for everyone. So let's imagine a race. It's a 100-mile race, and it has a starting line and a finish line. We're going to call this the race to succeed. It has runners that vary in terms of running ability. Some are slow, some are fast, some have longer endurance or better strides. And they're placed randomly along the length of the race. Some start near the finish line, some start near the beginning, and some are in the middle. This random placement, this is called the lottery of birth. It's a lottery, it's random, and it's just where you're born that determines what will happen. And this lottery of birth and the race to succeed, it's our society, it's our life as Americans. So impoverished runners will start near the 20-mile mark, just because they were born there. And affluent runners will start near the 80-mile mark, just because they were born there. So, if we look at the runners at the 80-mile mark category, they are far more likely to still be there when they are adults than they are to have moved down to the 20-mile mark. The runners at the 20-mile mark category are far more likely to be there when they are adults than they are to have moved up to the 80-mile mark category. To put this in perspective, the runners at the 80-mile mark category are 5 times more likely to be there than a runner at the 20-mile mark category will have been to move up. This concept is called social mobility. It's the movement up or down social classes. But what I want to focus on is upward mobility. It's the movement up through social classes. So if this race is our society as Americans, which it is, let's look at the races of other countries and see how we compare. We have one of the lowest social mobilities in all wealthy democratic nations in the world. Why does this matter? Having the notion that as hard as you work or as smart as you are, you're never going to make it out of poverty is one that millions face. And it's not fair, it's not practical, and it's not beneficial. So let's put this social mobility in terms of something we've come to know is important. The American dream. The American dream says that everyone who's a United States citizen has the equal opportunity to achieve success through hard work, determination, and initiative. If we translate this back to a race analogy, success is the finish line, achievement is the ability to get to the finish line, and hard work, determination, and initiative are how you get there. So, I'm not here to tell you whether the American dream is still alive or not. That's a big debate in our country today. I'm just here to underscore its importance and to explain why keeping it alive is really important to our economy and our society. So, there was a study done that compared social mobility to economic inequality. The higher the income inequality, the lower the social mobility, which is the case for us right now. We have high income inequality and we have lower social mobility. And then there's something called the Gini index. For a country, if everyone had the same amount of wealth, the Gini index score would be 0. And if one person had all the wealth and everyone else had nothing, the Gini index score would be 1. So, Norway, it's a country in Europe, fairly wealthy. It has a Gini index score of 0.26. And the Congo, it is a country in sub-Saharan Africa, has a score of 0.44. The US is much closer to the Congo than it is to Norway. It has a Gini index score of 0.41. Two researchers, Emmanuel Sayes and Thomas Piketty, looked at IRS tax data from the past century. And they looked at this to see when inequality was highest, and it was highest during 1928 and 2008. After both these years, giant economic crashes. There was the Great Depression in 1928 and the recent recession in 2000. When inequality was lowest, it was a period of time between 1950 and 1980. It was called the Great Prosperity. During this time, wages increased, and GDP increased, and production increased, and the economy expanded. Also during this time, there was a higher emphasis on education, and college attendance rates went up. They also noted that the higher the inequality, the more the polarization in the political arena. Voting was more contentious, and elections were more spread apart. And lastly, they noted correlation between higher inequality and more wages to CEOs relative to that of their employees. And when inequality was highest as well, there were lower tax rates on the top 20%. When inequality was lowest, there was a more relative similarity between the CEO's wages and their average worker. And also when inequality was lowest, there were higher taxes on the top 20%. Why does this matter? Isn't inequality a good thing? Shouldn't we keep it? Can it motivate people? If you're thinking that, you're in good company, because that's very true. It can be a very motivational force for people to want to work hard and pull themselves up the social ladder. But it can only be a good thing to an extent. The UN published this data that looked at inequality across a group of nations, and we went really high inequality. A British researcher took this data, and he compared it to a number of social issues. Some were obesity and substance abuse, homicide rates, and social mobility. And he found that the higher the income inequality of a country, the more the social problems. We are all the way at the top. So, to recap, we've just seen how some of society's biggest problems are directly attributed to inequality. We've seen how wage trends and taxes and GDP and education trends parallel the trends of inequality during that time. And we've seen how higher inequality will result in lower social mobility, and we've seen how we fare in terms of social mobility. So, we're faced with a large series of connected problems. So now we look for a solution, and a lot of people will say education. Education is the great equalizer. It's the tool that theoretically anyone can have access to and use to propel themselves up the social ladder by working hard. Theoretically. So a lot of us are thinking about college, or we're worrying about college, or because we're already in it, we're ignoring it. And this is the case for a lot of people. And so a lot of us will go to college, and some of us will get scholarships, or we'll go the military route. We'll pay out of pocket. But a lot of us will probably take out a loan, and so all the talk of student debt comes into play. The average borrower will graduate with a debt of $28,400, and that is a lot of money to pay for someone who has yet to find a job to use that degree they just spent so much money on. Let's leave college behind and go back to preschool for a second. There's a group of wealthy nations called the OECD. It includes nations like the US and the UK and Canada and Britain and France. 70% of 3-year-olds in these nations are enrolled in preschool. 38% of Americans who are 3-year-olds are. Let's fast forward to middle school and high school, where the majority of the country will turn to public education. The public education system is set up with the intention of giving everyone equal opportunity to get a good education and eventually getting to college. This isn't always the case. Because the public education system is dependent on local property taxes, you'll have affluent neighborhoods with more higher tax rates, and then there's more wealth, and there's better resources, and there's higher paid teachers, and there's more help for the affluent kids. And then in impoverished neighborhoods, where there's lower tax rates, there's less wealth circulating, there's fewer resources, there's less wages for teachers, and the impoverished kids don't get the help that they need. These differences in schooling matter. It literally determines who will succeed and who won't, regardless of how smart you are. So, let's go back to college, everyone's favorite topic in the room. There are FAFSA, and there's Pell Grants, and there's affirmative action. All of these have the intention of leveling the playing field of education. But this doesn't always work. Recently, resources are being shifted from Pell Grants to other forms of higher aid. Student loans are being given out need-blind, and federal tax breaks are benefiting affluent kids over impoverished kids. At an elite university, you are 25 times more likely to run into a rich kid than you are a poor kid. Intelligence is universal, that's a given. There are rich kids who don't do well in school, and there are impoverished kids who are really bright. Talent is universal, but our society and our education system has it so that opportunity is not. It's in our best interest as a society to change this and to improve this and to make it so that every person has access to equal education and equal opportunity in order to use it to propel themselves up the social ladder. And this is a very broad and contentious statement, I get that. But history is on the side of it. In times when higher education was emphasized, the society as a whole benefited. There was higher education, workers were better educated, GDP and productivity and the economy expanded. And from this, wages were able to be increased, so workers had more money. Consumerism expanded, people bought more, so then the companies had more revenue. With that revenue, they hired more, and so more people were working. And when you have more people working, you have more people paying taxes, and there's more money circulating back to the government, which they then put back into education. And we have a cycle that continues and feeds itself. So, how do we do this? How is it even possible to do that again, or to do that at all? When solutions come to mind, I warn you against associating these with political labels or even economic ones. Let the data and the statistics and the history that we just saw speak for itself and tell us what we should be doing in order to get back to that goal. Universal primary education. It's important. It's been shown that investing $1 in universal pre-K gets a return of $7. And increasing the national minimum wage to a living wage. Consumerism expands, and more workers are encouraged to participate in the workforce, so the economy grows. Lowering tuition in colleges by funneling more funds from the government into public universities increases college attendance, and student debt goes down. There's nothing impractical about using data and statistics to back up these solutions and to want to move forward. There's nothing liberal or conservative about making good investments in our society. And there's nothing partisan about wanting a society that reaches its full potential. That is something that is universally accepted as a good thing. We live in a world of 7 billion people. What if the cure for cancer is in a child of mine right now, and they were just born in Brooklyn, or Los Angeles, or Appalachia? They could go through school, they could work harder, they could slack off, but it probably wouldn't matter because the state of education in poor neighborhoods. They may go to college, they probably could get a scholarship, but the more likely outcome, they will take a student loan, and they will graduate with years of student debt. They can find themselves a job, maybe 2 at minimum wage, in order to live comfortably. But the chances that they will be able to apply this intelligence and their ideas and make it mean something and actually benefit our society are slim. This seems like a hypothetical, but why couldn't it be the case? Talent is universal, opportunity is not. We are limiting our society to the talents of the winners of the lottery of birth, and we are not realizing the potential of everyone else. It's in our best interest to change this. As successful as our society was, as successful as it is or isn't now, we could be so much more successful if only we give everyone the opportunity to contribute. Thank you.